would they buy your product? They would only buy your product because your product makes sense to them.
Right.
But today, because of so much of supply, there's not too much of distinction.
Correct.
Beyond returns, there is no. So what is the distinction? The distinction is you.
Right.
If
Educating them.
educating them, and more importantly, how can you add value to them?
Right.
What are they looking for? They are looking for their personal growth,
Correct.
their personal well-being,
Right.
enhancing their wealth, and enhancing their market capitalization.
Right.
Can you give them solutions for that?
Right.
Hello, thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Siddhartha, firstly. And for everybody, Siddhartha is the COO and MD at Ambit Wealth. It's a full service investment bank. He has been the co-founder at IFL Wealth. So, would you be able to drive us through your journey? How did you choose a career? How did you land up in wealth and finance? And how did it go about it?
So Aswini, many thanks for having me, and having a conversation with you is always a pleasure, and so much to learn from you at such a young age. You are influencing the world. You're not influencing Bharat, you are influencing the world, because you are enabling so many people to take the right career path and then excel and then make a difference, creating a multiplier effect, what we all know as the butterfly effect. My journey started from a very small town. So I was born in a small place known as Rampur. It's in central Uttar Pradesh. Not so popular, very popular, but not so famous Rampuri Chaku, if you remember.
Right.
And the automatic chakus, the automatic knives, which used to come, and that's where I was born. And I grew up at a place known as Renupur, which is easternmost UP. Hindalco Industries Limited. That's where I grew up, and then did my company secretary and did my BCom honors from Delhi University, and then I was a gold medalist at Narseh Monjee Institute of Management Studies. It was not my plan, but UTI Bank came to the campus, and it was not Axis Bank back then, and we were 28 of us management trainees who were absorbed from various B schools. I am Calcutta, I am Bangalore, Lucknow, SP Jain, JBIMS, NMIMS, and so on and so forth. The interesting part is that in every decision of my life, there is something which providential power has done. And it's actually beyond imagination. So we all got trained for 6 months in UTI Bank as management trainees, and then we had to move into departments, and we gave our choices. We were supposed to give number 1, number 2. And my first choice was merchant banking, investment banking on the debt side. The only little problem was the business head at that point in time, who was the president of UTI Bank, and president, just to give you a perspective, used to report directly to the CEO. He had one thinking and one fixated thought process, that he would only want an engineer from IIT and an IIM graduate to be in the department. Unfortunately, I'm none.
Right.
Then what do? So, you work harder. Whatever projects were given in the department, you did well. And you created a case in front of him, ensuring that you are in that department. And bingo, I landed in merchant banking. So I started my career with debt markets investment banking. Fortunately, we were lucky. Me and a couple of colleagues were responsible for doing the first credit card receivable securitization transaction in the history of India.
Wonderful.
And then, as the debt markets started to shrink, because we were on the non-SLR side, we were not on the GSEC side, non-SLR side, and as interest rates started to rise, we started seeing the shrinkage of the debt markets, and hence, being impatient, maybe I didn't have a mentor, maybe I didn't have somebody to guide, and I chose to move into a different path of wealth management, and I moved to Citibank. Did some good work there, lot of enthusiasm, lot of energy, lot of running around, From corporate banking, from investment banking to wealth management was a different ball game. Then thought that if you have to do things, why don't you do things in a bigger way? Because Citibank only allowed you to offer liability business to the clients, liability solutions. Moved to HSBC, moved on the liabilities plus asset side.
Okay.
And there, the growth was good because energy was there, passion was there, hard work was there. And I still remember we used to work 16, 17 hours a day and it was crazy. God was very, very kind. God gave the direction, and fortunately, I was given the assignment to head the biggest wealth branch of the country, which is the Nepean Road, Pedder Road branch of HSBC. And I was also, incidentally, the youngest branch manager.
Okay.
At the age of 27, when a lot of people are still studying, God was very, very kind. He allowed me to take that responsibility. Fortunately, and nothing to do with me, I got a great, great, great team. Thanks to that team, this branch also became the most profitable branch in the country. Then, co-founded IFL Wealth, stayed there for a few years, thought that something was amiss there. Left a lot of ESOPs, left a lot of equity. Incidentally, there again, they did an internal award ceremony, etc., and it was by vote.
Okay.
And I was given the most knowledgeable person, and it was generally voted because I like to teach, I like to give my experiences back to the world so that maybe where I have burnt my hands, that journey can be shorter for the lakhs of people who may or may not have the mentor. And that is the reason why I specifically wrote this book as well, along with Kaushik. The purpose of this book is because, and that's what I believe, there are three people who are by default going to be successful, hyper successful. Number one, if you're born to rich parents, extraordinarily rich parents, parents with connection, parents who are moving in the coterie or corridors of power,
Right.
automatically you will have everything with you.
Right. Absolutely.
Number two, if you're prodigy, if you're gifted, if you're extraordinarily talented,
The Lata Mangeshkar example.
absolutely. If you are prodigy, maybe you will clear your PhD when you are 13, 14.
Right.
People will spot that talent.
Right.
You are Lionel Messi, you are extraordinary. Then the third number, you get good gurus, you get good teachers, you get good mentorship only in life. Because somebody spots you, some teacher, some guru has spotted you, has seen the talent, what happened with Chandragupta Maurya and with Acharya Chanakya.
Right.
Acharya Chanakya spotted that child.
Correct.
And that's only by luck. But what if you don't have any of the three? 99% of the people who are on this planet, 800 crore people, 810 crore people, they don't have
Right.
these three things. Aren't you supposed to be successful? Aren't you supposed to reach your peak potential? Aren't you supposed to get all those experiences with these three categories?
Yeah.
Have. Why should you be underprivileged? Humans have extraordinary capability, and all humans
Yes.
are equal. Somebody has different facet of life, somebody has different interest in life, but overall you are 100%. Then why shouldn't you reach your 100%? And that's where the purpose of this book, to ensure that it reaches and gives guidance to everyone who doesn't have any of the three. And look at the ecosystem of the world. We keep talking about women empowerment, we keep talking about women being stronger. But what are we doing? Whether it is West, whether it is anywhere. So generally, if you look at from an overall perspective, the outlook towards the girls, women is of three kinds. You have something in a Middle Eastern side, which is in the Islamic state generally. Women are treated like their private property. You are covered, You are not supposed to speak. Now, there are quite a few countries which are becoming. So, UAE is a great example where women empowerment has led to their success. Saudi Arabia is moving in that path.
Right.
Very, very phenomenal. Look at the success and the growth and the diversification. It's all linked with the women empowerment.
Right.
Such a small change, but again creating a butterfly effect. And Saudi Arabia is now becoming a global nation. And in next 10 years, 20 years, you will see that happen.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So there is one perspective where women is treated as the private property. Then you have another scheme of things. You have in the West, where women are just supposed to be in Hindi or in Tatsam Hindi, there is something known as upbhog, which means to be used. Everybody talks about wine women. Why?
Right.
Is it wine is something where you get intoxicated, where you feel
Yes.
high?
Right.
Why should women be like that?
Right.
Is it a vastu? Is it an object?
Right.
That's what is the Western culture. That's what is the European culture or the so-called Paschim Sabhyata only spoke about that. Then we had our Sanatan philosophy. And Sanatan philosophy spoke about what? The importance of woman, the importance of the girl, importance of the lady everywhere.
Right.
The lady of the house is pujaniya.
Right.
यत्र नारी तत्र नारायण. जहां नारी है, जहां नारी की पूजा है, वही नारायण है. And that is the reason from times immemorial, all the states, the daughters were named after the states, not
The sun.
the sons.
Right.
Ma Gandhari, Ma Kaushalya,
Right. Gandhar. Kaushal.
Gandhar, absolutely. Similarly, you never say Vasudev Nandan Krishna.
Right.
You say Devki Nandan. You say Kaushalya Nandan Shri Ram.
Right.
So the mother's identity
Yes.
is important, not the male member.
A lot of this has kind of been lost in the Chinese whisper over the centuries, particularly the past 2000 years or so. It's more of that's been lost in these the way it's been passed on, the way things have changed in terms of these things, right? Even for example, the Sati Pratha. So it's nowhere there in the scriptures. It just started because of the invasions happening, and that's how it went on.
So very, very interesting. Why did the male member or the father's name became mandatory? Till about 14th century, 15th century, there
Right.
was no mandate.
Correct.
Why in every certificate you need father's name? Why shouldn't the mother's name be the identity? Mother knows who's the child. Mother knows everything.
Right.
It started all when the speed to colonization, economic colonization began in 14th, 15th century.
Okay.
And that's when men from the West went and colonized. And then they had a lot of children. They started thinking what will happen, and that's where certain orphanages, and then orphanages were subsequently converted into convents, and then the change that who will, otherwise what will be their future, and hence
Right.
the male member was made important. Because if the male member is not made important, then you can't colonize.
Right.
Because if the child starts believing in mother only, then your ground level sabhyata, ground level
Right.
organization, ground level civilization will continue to prosper. If I have to make an influence, then I have to make the child believe that the invader, somebody who forced upon himself or herself on the civilization,
Mhm.
is meaningful, and that's when the name of the father became mandatory. Because if you're self-sufficient with mother's name, with father's name not being required, you don't have to look outward. You're very, very happy with the civilization.
Right.
And that's where things started to change from 14th, 15th century onwards. And then Today, it has become the
Right.
norm.
And there's a lot more wokeness as well coming into our country.
Absolutely.
So, since we were talking about, being the most profitable branch when we were talking about it, so a lot of times what I see is people have a very myopic view when we're talking about the finance profiles.
Sure.
So, where everybody wants to do equity research, everybody wants to become a fund manager, everybody wants to get into investments. But when we're looking at it, we see the number of people, let's say a proportion, I'm just giving an example, a ballpark figure, let's say. So we see that, let's say, for one fund manager, there could be, let's say, 20 analysts, but for 20 analysts, you have probably 1,000 salespeople. So the sales factor, the sales aspect becomes extremely important, particularly in wealth side as well. So how do you look at this aspect? So how important are the sales skills when I'm looking at a finance profession?
So, Ashwini, very, very simple. If a mother has 3 or 4 children, whom she'll feed the first? The one who's making most noise, the one who's crying.
Right.
In any family, who's given the ultimate respect? The one who brings the bread to the table.
Correct.
Somebody who cooks the food is not valued. Somebody who serves the food is not valued. Somebody who brings the food is valued. The best of the investment bankers, the top notch, the MDs, the CEOs, the promoters, what is their job?
Bring money, AUM.
To bring AUM, to connect with people, to bring business.
Right.
What is that?
Sales.
Everything at the highest level. When Prime Minister Modi is talking about a particular subject in the parliament, what he's trying to do? He's trying to sell the concept that this is the right thing to do for the nation, for the country, for the world. What he's trying to do, he's trying to sell the concept. When you are interacting with me right now and trying to get my perspective, what are you trying to do? You are trying to change the mindset of certain people who have blockages.
Right.
What are you trying to do? You are trying to sell them a concept which otherwise they are blocked for. So anything from the childhood till you die, if you are trying to pursue anything, it is subconscious selling skills.
So how do you develop these sales skills? Particularly for somebody who's more technical and who's got a more domain-specific knowledge in finance.
You spoke about very interesting thing, equity research, right? Equity research is supposed to be very, very technical. You are supposed to do the company analysis. You are supposed to look at the balance sheet. You are supposed to look at the schedules. You are supposed to look at the misgivings in the schedule. You are supposed to figure out some of the hidden things. You know it all. After you have made a report,
you have to sell it to the investor, to the fund manager, to the
you are talking to the fund manager constantly. You are talking to the investors. You are talking not only to the fund manager, but even at the bottom of the pyramid, you have to talk at least 3-4 key pointers. What are you saying? You have written a report which is running into 30 pages.
Right.
You are talking about only 3 points which the guy at the bottom, analyst, is all right to understand and then pushes your case that the fund manager, who may be a fund manager of an FII, gives you time for 1 hour.
Right.
So first you have to sell with 3 points out of 30-page report to the analyst, then analyst buys it, analyst sells it to the fund manager, and then the fund manager meets you in the process. Analyst is looking pretty, so that if he will say that I identified this brokerage house or this idea first, he will get a brownie point, the fund manager will get a brownie point, the investor will look pretty, investor will brag in his social circle, I invested in this fund
And I got this much return.
and I got this much returns, and then the other people will say that we have bought so many things because we made money. So again they are bragging. So the entire circle is of sales.
And that's why I say that you need to improve your writing skills. So one problem what I see is When I'm talking to brokerage houses and all, so the equity head and couple of people, that in terms of hiring, they are very comfortable with hiring a person. They have good skills in terms of financial modeling, in terms of valuations, in terms of reading the reports. But the problem is when it comes to writing. And as you mentioned that, in the first page, the executive summary, you have to capture somebody's attention and you have to sell the product in order for them to read that 30 pages of the report and get to the meeting and then to sell the stock in the story that you're willing to. And yeah, absolutely. So anything particularly that finance professionals can do in order to upskill themselves in terms of sales?
3 very, very simple things. Number 1, write whatever you are listening.
Yes.
Whatever you are listening, write it down.
Yes.
And write it down in points.
Right.
And the beauty, as you rightly said, Aswini, writing is so critical. You know why?
Absolutely.
Because while speaking you can fib, while writing you can't fib.
Right.
When you write something, the name Aswini is behind it. Whatever I have written in this book, I can't shy away from this.
Right.
So when you write even a sentence or an email,
right,
your name is behind it. What do you speak? You can say that I was fickle-minded, I said this, I said that. But when you write, you are grounded, you are specific, you have to make sense out of it and you have to give a logic. Why did you say when you said this? So that's number 1. So write in pointers. If you can't write one paragraph, write a sentence. If you can't write a sentence, write a phrase. But start writing. You at least have 3 meaningful conversations every day. Or you listen to something meaningful every day 3 times, at least. Can you have 3 summaries of 3 pointers, 3 things in a diary, in your personal diary, which can be referred?
Right.
So that's number 1. Number 2, for selling, the simple thing is likability. All your decisions in your life are actually made because you like something. All your decisions are influenced because of this single word known as likability. Will someone do business with you irrespective of how knowledgeable you are? The answer is no. Your likability quotient has to be higher. You take a decision to have a girlfriend, to have a spouse, to have a partner, because he or she is more likable. You like a teacher, hence the reciprocation happens from the teacher, and when that reciprocation happens, you tend to learn more, you take more interest, and when you take more interest, the teacher takes more interest, and that the multiplier effect, small,
right,
the largest strand of the grass becomes taller.
Correct.
That is the reason why on the same field, 4 or 5 strands of grass are taller, rest of them are shorter. Every strand of grass receives the same amount of dew, same amount of water, same amount of sunlight. Why there is a differentiating factor? The differentiating factor is that one strand which has little more courage, little more reason, little more deprivation to succeed, makes a nanomillimeter grow. Because of which it receives very small iota of sunlight and water. And then through the years, it multiplies and then it becomes into a butterfly effect. Exactly the same way, when you take a decision of investing into a stock, which has been thoroughly researched, not gone through the fad, learned through a lot of people who are saying or hearsay of friends, you have done the research, and when the stock corrects, you go back to the thesis where you have written it, reconfirm what the thesis is, it playing out. Then you invest more and then you see the multiplier effect rather than getting panicky. Most people in investing do the research after they have invested into the stock and the stock has corrected.
Right.
When you do any due diligence to buy a real estate property, do you check the papers? Do you go and visit the property after you have bought it or before?
Right.
When you want to marry a girl, do you see the family? Do you meet the parents, the relatives, etc. before or after?
Right.
Same thing, life and investing is exactly the same. Relationships and investing are exactly the same. You build things which will help you multiply and the other party. It's conjoined. The companionship of investing and relationships are exactly the same. The nuances are the same. If you invest constantly in a toxic relationship, what will happen? It will drain you out.
Right.
Your focus will be only to salvage that relationship rather than reaching your peak potential, ensuring that you get everything else in the world, but your focus will be only to mend that relationship, only be in that relationship and suffer in it. Similarly, in the investing, you have invested into 3 stocks. One stock is bad and you are losing money constantly without researching, without understanding, and that's a bad company or there have been some malfeasance, toxicity in that. You have not been able to focus on the rest of them, and you are constantly only going to be focusing on the company where you're losing money and becoming impatient because your emotions are getting overpowering your reasonable reasoning or your thinking is
Right.
clouded there.
Right. So a lot of students say that they are trying to make a shift from a sales-oriented profile to the technical side at times. So how do you go about that?
Very, very simple. First thing is, when you are thinking about shifting from the sales to the technical side, when you are doing sales, whom are you meeting? You're meeting people who are reasonably wealthy, because I'm
Right.
assuming that when you are in the wealth management sales, when you're in the asset management sales, when you're in the private banking sales, when you're in the investment banking sales,
Meeting
you are HNIs, ultra HNIs, family
Right.
offices, promoters,
Right.
corporates,
Absolutely.
right? So whom you are meeting? You're meeting the CFO, you're meeting the finance head, you're meeting the finance manager, you're meeting the CEO, you're meeting the CXO, you're
Right.
meeting the managing director, you're meeting the promoter. These are the people whom you're targeting.
Yes.
Now, when you are targeting them, obviously you're trying to sell something. That's fine. But beyond that, how would they buy your product? They would only buy your product because your product makes sense to them.
Right.
But today, because of so much of supply, there's not too much of distinction.
Correct.
Beyond returns, there is no. So, what is the distinction? The distinction is you.
Right.
If
Educating them.
educating them, and more importantly, how can you add value to them?
Right.
What are they looking for? They are looking for their personal growth,
Correct.
their personal well-being,
Right.
enhancing their wealth, and enhancing their market capitalization.
Right.
Can you give them solutions for that?
Right.
Now, when you are selling any of the products, financial products, irrespective of the domain you are in, if you are enhancing either of the 3 we have just now mentioned, you will also understand their problem first.
Right.
Because how can you give a solution without understanding their problem?
Right.
So you will understand their problem. When you will understand their problem, they will talk about the entire background. You have to have the appreciation, you have to have the patience, and you should appreciate their line of thinking. You have to put yourself, you have to empathize, you have to get into their shoes, then figure out a solution and then solve it.
And you have to be technically sound as well in order to make.
So think about it, Ashwini, when you know everything about them,
Right.
in your equity research, what are you doing? You are talking about, so 3 things people give a lot of weightage.
Okay.
One is balance sheet,
Right.
one is future forecast, which is financial modeling,
Right.
and third is the ground level fundamental research, right?
Right.
As in what you have heard from the ecosystem, from the
Right.
suppliers, from the distributors, from the wholesalers, from the
Channel
ex-employees,
checks and
the channel checks.
Right.
Now, in this, one is given. Your balance sheet
Right.
is given.
Right.
Balance sheet reading beyond a point can be done by algorithms as well. You feed in the data,
Right.
you have all the websites which are available, you are
Right.
also aware.
Right.
All the analysis is there. Financial modeling, is based on assumptions,
Correct.
right? So once you have, and all assumptions in real life, and I'm sure in your life, at least in my life, whatever we have assumed, everything has gone for, right? So financial models, you can make those models, but after making those models, there are assumptions,
Right.
and assumptions will change.
Correct.
Now, how close are you to the assumptions will only be known by the third factor if you know the channel, if you know the promoter very well.
Yes.
In sales, what are you doing? You are doing the third thing constantly.
Right.
When you're meeting the promoter, if you're meeting a distributor is a rich man. If he's making tons of money, he's your potential client.
Right.
And when you are understanding the distributor, you know that how much of a product he is actually channelizing.
Right.
Is there velocity? Or is it a slow moving item? If it is a slow moving item, then automatically a lot of working capital is stuck in there. Which means he does not have investable surplus, which means he is not your client. So you are approaching someone where the movement of goods or services is anyway fast. If that is the case, you automatically know that what you're learning is going to enhance your technical skills. So there is no such thing as technical skills or sales.
Okay.
The question is, if technical skills would have been the only thing, why on the bold people who do the trading? That's a technical thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is NFT, there is HFT,
Right.
there is high frequency trading, there is low frequency trading.
Right.
Why don't you think that the senior most people who are at the CXO level sit and do HFT?
Right.
They don't. The idea is, as you mature, your natural skill is to have conversations, is not to sell, but to have conversations,
Right.
is to be a problem solver. You have certain products. Can you position it, B, little bit tweak it, little bit customize it,
Mm-hmm.
and solve it for the client?
So, as your position as a CEO, so we understand CIO is going to be handling with the investments aspect.
Correct.
So, what would be the difference in terms of work profile, or what would you do as a COO versus a CEO of an investment bank?
So, a CIO typically is actually responsible, though he does not take the decision.
Okay.
Although he does not take the decision independently, because there are teams,
Fund
there are
managers
fund
and
managers,
analysts
there
and
are
associates.
analysts. But if the necessary returns in compared to the benchmark,
Right.
necessary returns as compared to the peers
Mm-hmm.
do not arrive,
Mm-hmm.
then he or she is responsible for it. Now, let's just break this into the next level. If the returns are coming, there is no question, everything is fine.
Perfect.
But if returns are not as per the client's expectation, benchmark, peers,
Right.
then what happens? You're trying to sell the concept why it didn't come.
Right.
You're trying either to have more time where you are selling,
Right.
then you are selling the concept that why should you continue to hold, or then you are trying to figure out from the company why the earnings didn't pan out,
Okay.
why the P multiples didn't expand the way one was envisaging.
Right.
Though you should never play on the P multiple expansion, you should only play on the earnings,
Right.
and only
Right.
earnings.
Right.
However, there is a deep down belief that my P multiple should expand, right?
Right.
Because that's a free money which
Right.
you anyways get. So what he or she is trying to do is get answers, then sell the same concept.
Right.
So from a CIO perspective, obviously, if you have done research, the natural career progression is that you start as an associate, then you become a senior associate, then you become an analyst, then you become a senior analyst, then you become a lead analyst, sector analyst, and then you become a head of research, and then if you move it on the buy side,
Right.
then exactly the same role, and then you become a fund manager,
then CIO.
then CIO.
Right.
So, however, the skills are not very different. The only differentiating part is that here you have to do a little bit of more reading and conversing. Here you have to do more of conversing and then reading.
Okay.
So it's 70-30 towards the reading, listening, and then 30% conversing.
Right.
Here you have to do 70% conversing
Right.
and 30%. Plus, here a lot of people believe that sales is all about cold calling, figuring
Not
out.
that.
So it is
Not that.
absolutely.
That's
it
at
is
the lowest possible level, and again, not so much on the investment side of the industry.
absolutely
Correct.
absolutely. It's a pull effect.
Yes.
It's a pull effect. It's knowledge based. It's not a push product.
Right.
Similarly, when you have to take a meeting, so if you're an analyst on the buy side or on the sell side,
Right.
and if you want to get into the corporate access and you want to meet the promoter,
Right.
you have to make a call.
Correct.
And how do you get through that?
Through your knowledge,
Absolutely.
your expertise, your experience.
Absolutely. So you tell them that, hey, look, how can my conversation with you,
Can add your value to your portfolio.
absolutely, because I'm analyzing not only your company. You may
Yes.
be in the food business. You are only looking at the food
Your
business.
company.
I have looked at 30 food businesses
Yes.
which have grown, which have become from 1 to 100.
And that's why the analysts make a move to the industry side, and they have a much broader perspective.
Absolutely.
And because they're looking at a much broader view of the industry as at large.
Absolutely. And they have seen failures, they have seen successes.
Yes.
They have seen what has worked in the capital
And
markets.
without biases.
Without
because they are
bias.
the ones who are taking decisions. So they have a better perspective of how things are working. And a lot of people I see moving to the industry side and doing extraordinarily well. So again, what is the difference between the CEO's work and the CEO's work?
So
in that
the
case?
CEO is responsible for everything on a wholesome
Right.
basis because he or she is responsible for the profitability and then the market capitalization, etc. The COO's role is ensuring that there is rightful compliance.
Okay.
Because if anything goes wrong, it's my personal liability.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two is ensuring that service operations, sales,
Okay.
conversations, pitching the right product at the right time, ensuring that the channels, as you rightly said, ensuring that the people raise money. Because if you don't have money,
Right.
what will you manage?
Right.
So getting that money, getting the client experience in place, and then giving them the feedback, also ensuring that in the investment thesis, if something is not working out, can you be the sounding board? Because remember, everybody is very passionate with their children. Your mother will never say that Aswini has ever done anything bad. Similarly, when you have identified a company as an analyst or you have invested as a fund manager, more often you'll fall in love with your investments.
Yeah.
There is
Yes.
somebody, as you rightly said, an unbiased view.
Right.
Can somebody who can bring the market view? Can somebody bring the client view? Can somebody bring the peer view? And that's what is the role which I am playing here. Working hard is important, but why is working hard important? What happens when you work hard? You end up doing many more things.
Right.
So